This is what most people think climbing is, but under the surface, there is so much more. Last year, I climbed at B-Pump Tokyo and saw the biggest improvement of my climbing career. On the way, I learned the 4 fundamental keys that most amateur climbers don't know how to apply. And in this video, I'm gonna share them with you. Stay until the end where I'll share a free resource to help you apply these concepts and go from where you are to where you wanna be. Last video, there was a bunch of amazing comments that made my day. A lot of people also wanted me to give them tips to break through plateaus or training routines. I'm not a coach and I'm not a pro climber. That's why I don't want to share any training routines I'm not 100% sure will apply to you. What I will share is these 4 key concepts that will help anyone regardless of their climbing ability. Before talking about that, I want to share a simple framework that changed how I viewed my climbing, and combined with those 4 concepts resulted in incredible gains. The concept is called limiting reactant. When I was a kid, I wasn't really good at chemistry, but this concept stuck with me after all these years, and it's something you can apply to life and to climbing. In chemistry, you need certain elements to get a reaction. Just like a cooking recipe, if you don't have the ingredients, you can't cook the dish. The same goes in climbing. Depending on the climb, you might need finger strength, core stability, balance, flexibility, the list goes on. But something that kept me from improving was knowing that each of those ingredients need to be in certain proportions. Let's take, for example, your project and say it needs what you have. You can clearly tell that you're lacking footwork skills in order to send the climb, even though you have more than enough finger strength. It's pretty obvious that different climbs need different requirements. If that's so, why do so many climbers use the same strategies and same way of thinking on every single climb? We've all been there before, banging our heads against the wall, not understanding why we can't do a move. Usually, the first most intuitive thought is that we're not strong enough, that we don't have the finger strength to hold the hold. That's because it's the easiest way to think about it. It's pretty obvious, your hand slips, so you think it's your hand. But usually, that's not the case. But there's a way to fix this. In chemistry, after the reaction is done, the excess just becomes waste. But in climbing, you can use your strengths to make up for your weaknesses, just a little bit. But this is exactly the paradox of being strong. In theory, being stronger is better. But in practice, that's not always the case. If you always cover your weaknesses with your strengths, you'll never learn from them. And instead of facing a lot of small challenges where you improve your skills, you end up hitting a massive wall that's much harder to get over. Sometimes you can muscle your way through a climb, but not this one. I guarantee that if you look at climbing through this lens, you're going to improve no matter what. I know that because this mindset shift is what allowed me to break through multiple plateaus last year. Surface, strength. The first key is where most people get it wrong. With the rise of fingerboard training protocols, getting stronger is easier than ever. But there's a reason why some of the best pro climbers don't hangboard. Don't get me wrong, being strong is important. There's no way around it. If you cannot hold the hold, even if you're doing everything perfect, there's no way you're gonna get through it. It's just that the way most people do it, the way I did it, we end up becoming hangboard monsters, but mediocre climbers. I had a background in calisthenics, so when I started, I was already pretty strong. For the first 3 years, I would barely use my feet. I would just put my foot on the hold, but never transfer my weight onto it. Even with heel hooks, I would place my foot on the hold, but it will never pull me into the hold. So it was useless. And that's when a series of unfortunate injuries began. Wolfgang Gulich said, "Getting strong is easy, but getting strong without getting injured is hard. If you are injured, you cannot train and cannot climb. Simple." Nowadays, I see a lot of friends getting into climbing, but they climb around V2 and think that finger strength is their problem, so they end up going up to a campus board or a fingerboard. This is clearly not what's holding them back. I'm not saying this to be mean. I made this video for them because I want them to improve without getting injured and without just pushing this plateau just a little bit further down the line if they get stronger. If you look at these stats, you'll see there's people from the V5, V6 range that have the finger strength to climb V15. I understand those are outliers, but it does show you the mindset of most people. And if you look at V4, you can see that there's even an outlier that can climb V10. I think it's clear most people stuck in these grades aren't here because of lack of finger strength. Let's check it out ourselves. Comment down below what grade you should be climbing and what grade you are climbing according to these stats. My 2 cents is to focus on building up your body slowly over time. If you improve just 1% week over week, you'll have done over 70% in gains on the first year. And by the third, 345%. Now, I've seen a lot of the comments on my first video. You were already strong when you started this. Yeah, I understand that. But why do you think I had a plateau for like 2 years where I couldn't get over V5? That's because I was strong. I was so strong, I never learned how to move my feet. And because of that, when I got to a point where that was unavoidable, I just couldn't learn it. The wall was too big. I had to get weaker in order to be able to focus on that. Otherwise, I would always use my strength to get around it. The best way to do that is just improve your strength gradually. And by doing that, you're gonna have to get over smaller obstacles constantly. Instead of one huge one, you're not sure you can get over. By just aiming for the 1% improvement week over week, the chances of getting injured are really low. And by doing that, you can spend most of your energy on trying to get better at climbing, not just stronger. Another very common mistake I did was thinking strength was just finger and arm strength. I could do pull-ups and I could hang on a board, but my shoulders were super weak and my core stability wasn't great. If your shoulders are weak, how much you can get out of hold is cut in half, regardless of your base finger strength. And if your core and legs are, you'll always be cutting loose. Climbing is a full body sport. How well we can use it will determine how easy it is to hold on, regardless of your finger strength. If you think about it, climbing is about very small gains, session after session. It's not one single session that has huge improvements. How can we make it so that those improvements are double or even triple per session? Adam Ondra once said, "There are way more powerful climbers compared to me, but I think I can take advantage of all my power due to my technique." As you might have guessed, the first level is technique. Toe hooks, heel hooks, drop knees, and snares. Don't get me even started about snares. Probably about 80% of climbers I see don't even snare or do it all wrong. If you haven't yet, please watch this video from Dave McLeod and your climbing will already improve just by that. Technique errors are usually a combination of 2 factors: lack of knowledge and the physical ability to carry it out. The first part is usually about exploration. What happens if I put my foot a little bit higher up? This takes time and is mainly about understanding the physics behind the move. Why we barn door is a great example. Once you understand you can solve it with an opposing force, you start smearing everywhere. But sometimes we fall short on the second part. Even after watching millions of videos, I couldn't do the techniques I wanted to. I would do every single drill and my heel hooks were still worthless. Same thing with high steps. If I put my foot really high up, I couldn't rock over into it. And the problem wasn't about knowledge, it was that second part. But when I moved to Japan and started climbing at B-Pump, I saw the difference between the average climber and me. At first, I didn't understand it. They would do the same moves as me, but it seemed so much easier for them. After a few weeks of studying their movements and asking why they were so much better than me, I finally understood it. You know how when you try out a new sport, a lot of really small, weird muscles hurt the next day? Well, it was kind of like that. They were climbing the same climbs as me, but it looked like a different sport. They were using those weird muscles that I would never use. My glutes were really stiff. My hips were really stiff. And because of that, they could get their hips to the wall so much closer than me. And even though I had probably 10 kilos more muscle than them, it was 3 times harder for me to stay on the wall compared to them. All those years of sitting on the floor instead of sitting in front of the computer like me really made a difference. Their hip mobility was much better, and you could tell. There's a reason why most pro climbers start really young, and why some of the most successful climbers have a background in something like gymnastics. Even though you might have the perfect beta and the strength to implement it, if you're stiff, you'll never be able to use technique to its full potential. Unlike strength, I can't imagine a situation where being mobile is not a good thing in climbing. I'm not talking about passive flexibility, but the ability to move and control your body throughout a wide range of motion. Now that you understand these three concepts, you should, in theory, be able to climb anything. But most people drop the ball on this last level. But if you're still watching this, you're already on the way to become one of those who don't. This last level is not only the most important one, but it's the most overlooked. This is something I can guarantee you that every single pro climber does. I was doing a paddle dyno and I couldn't seem to make it to the last one. I thought I needed to pull harder on the second hold. Friend flashed it, and his advice threw me off. Go slower. Slower? I can't reach the hold. How is going slower gonna help me get further? But I stopped complaining, I did it slower, and reached the last one. The difference between the average climber and a good one is they ask why. Why did I fall, and how can I fix it? And the great climber will not only try one way to fix it, but many. Quick tip, in most of these cases, finger strength is not the solution. And what's the difference between a great climber and a pro? The pro asks why it worked. They're not satisfied with just getting the boulder. They want to know that they can repeat the underlying movement so that if it shows up in a comp, even if it's different, they can adapt and get the send. Climbing is a complicated sport with many moving parts. That's why you need all 4 pillars or you're gonna drop the ball. Now, all of this is useless unless you put it into practice. That's why I made a free assessment PDF you can download down below that can help you find your limiting reactant.